Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Louisa Tanner-Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I'm joined with two amazing pals. I've got Jasmina above me.
Hello.
And I also got Kimberly, and they've both got their channels, and the details are all below in the description. Now, I'm going to keep this as concise as possible because we got loads of stuff to cover in this Saturn special. It's not a Saturn special, it's a Saturn Returns special. So we've all gone through a Saturn return. One of us has gone through two. In fact, if you actually look at the whole period of a Saturn return, sometimes you might have 2 or 3 Saturn returns in the whole complete Saturn return that's going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore our own Saturn returns, get really up close and personal, just share from our experience, what we learned, what we went through, you know, like how we were feeling as we were coming into it and all that kind of jazz. And we're going to look at some of the charts as well. So this really gives you an idea as to what you can do if you're coming up to your first or second or even third Saturn return. And also, hopefully, if you're learning astrology, it'll also help you in terms of understanding how you might choose to look at your chart and the transits around it. Ladies, how are you both? Jasmina, how are you doing?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm pretty busy as Saturn is squaring my moon and Mercury the whole year. I'm just working hard. That's all. Busy bee.
What about you, Kimberly? How are you doing?
I'm good this week. I've had Thanksgiving, you know, what we call that here, kicked my ass being with family. My parents are, you know, they're just aging and they're going through their stuff that they do at this time. So that's been heavy on me, a heavy Saturn energy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is worth sharing as well, like you might not be doing a Saturn return right now, but Saturn might be doing stuff in your charts. And so on that basis, it's also worth looking because you'll get a fair good idea as to how it might happen. For instance, so you've got your Saturn squaring your moon and Mercury right now, Jasmina.
Yes.
I've got Saturn recently went past my IC at the bottom of the chart and is now making an advance towards my moon and Jupiter. So that's going to be fun in the 4th house. But anyway, welcome to those of you that are watching already. If you've got any questions, then please feel free to drop them in the chat room. Let us know who you are, where you're from and whatnot, because you can become part of our show. Anyway, yeah. So should we start by having a look at yours first, Jasmina?
Absolutely. Let's kick it.
Okay,
it's
let's do
an interesting story.
Yeah. So, in fact, before we look at the chart, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what happened during your Saturn return, and then we'll look at it with the astrology.
Okay, so during my Saturn return, I got married and divorced. And that was my first marriage. Most of people don't even know. And then I had a business with my high school friend, and that partnership also fell apart. Everything during that summer of 2007.
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it?
It was, when I look back, it was really hard on me. It was really hard on me, especially my Saturn is in Leo. My ego was bruised. That was number one. I really felt that, you know, and betrayal and hurt. But now that I look at it, you know, it was a great school. It was, you know, expensive emotionally at the time, but I came out of it more secure in myself, not depending on others. I don't know. It's just... It helped me to stand on my own, not being needed, not, you know, because I always was in a relationship and, you know, trying to be. So I was alone. Yeah. You know, lost my best friend. My husband was also my best friend. So it was kind of, I lost a lot of things. And my mom passed away, you know, 5 years prior to that.
Yeah.
So I felt really on my own and lost, but to be honest, I came up stronger. I mean, I came up, you know, knowing that I can do it on my own, you know. So although it was hard, I'm grateful in a sense for that experience, so that I could you know, accomplish so much more later in life, not feeling that I need to do it with somebody.
That's a good lesson to learn, actually. But a tough one to learn at that age.
yeah. So yeah, my 20s were not so. I mean, there were some good parts, but there were heavy lessons. Let's say I had really, really life lessons, and then coming back home to my dad, it was his Saturn return as well, his second one, because he had me for his first return. So I came back home, staying with my dad, which was the two of us. So I kind of reconnected with him and got to know him for the first time, actually.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting outcome from this experience, getting to know my dad after 30 years to actually understand who he is. And we kind of bonded in that sense. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a really intense time. Interesting, isn't it? That during that time you were learning to like stand on your own 2 feet. And also like Saturn represents authority in so many different ways. But also I always think of parents with Saturn. Like I use Saturn as an indication of the quality of our parents, and in particular the dad, because Saturn is kind of a dude. Presents
so it was hard for him as well, his daughter coming back home, from like he felt responsible in a way to help me, and it's hard. It was hard for him because he's a Pisces, so he's in his own world, most of his life, right? So having something tangible to deal with, it was also tough for him, like this is a tangible problem. My child is going through a divorce and a business breakup with her friend, and she lost everybody, and now I'm the only one here for her, like for him, so it was hard. And for me, as I said, it was Leo. Think about Leo. My ego was really, really hurt, and then it's interesting how I felt really lost, where do I go from here? Where do I, like it's because I had some Pluto transits also, when Pluto was in Sagittarius, it was opposing all my Gemini, Moon, Mercury, Sun. So that's when I lost my mom, and later, it was just this transformation in my life on this is what maturity is. So you cannot rely, like, there's no parents to help you in that sense. There's no partner, there's no friend. It's just you. How are you going to manage your life from now on? And I had this business with my friend, and then it was like a partnership. We broke up, and then I bought her out. So I was left with this company, and then the recession came in 2008. And we were doing kitchen designs and stuff. So like everything was, there was nothing. Real estate was down, and I had to close my business as an aftermath and starting, to find job and starting building new career when I was 30. It was a lot of hard decisions. Like it was that's what Saturn, like making, this is finding your own authority, not blaming others in a sense. This is your life, your authority. You need to make decisions. On your own. That's in that sense, not relying on, blaming your parents. Oh, they made me do it. Nobody made me do anything. In that sense, I had to kind of, okay, what I want to do from now on? What is happening? Hard decisions, but at the end, it took me a couple of years. 2008 was also hard. In 2009, I just did it like this. After New Year's, I said, that's it. I was 31 at that point, so it was because there is a Saturn return shadow.
Yeah, I was going to say it took me a couple of years to get back on track.
Because there's this shadow when it starts and when it kind of back. So it kind of revisited everything. So in 2009, after 2 years, it took me 2 years to kind of get myself together. Which in a lifetime is not a lot. Like at the time, it feels like, oh my God, it's the end of the world.
Does feel like forever.
Because you felt like, oh my God, I'm 30, I have to start all over again. I invested time because I thought, oh my God, I invested so much time in these relationships and now they're gone. Like it's such a bad investment. Why, was I stupid? What was I thinking? Just you think about all these negative things. Not, now when I look at it with the distance, I feel okay. I had fun. It was not all bad. Like I had, good times, but at that time, you don't see it, you don't feel it. It's just, and trying to understand what maturity is. What does it mean to make a decision, live with it, and and accepting even if you fail. So that's the also one important thing, acceptance of failure. It's not a failure, but in that sense it's not a success either, right? You had a failed marriage, failed partnership, failed business, it's like and then at that time I didn't even finish my university degree because I was scattered all over the place with getting married and doing the business, and then which actually pulled me. I went back to the university to get my degree, which I finally did after 17 years. When I enrolled, when I was 35, I finally got my degree. I mean, I was doing the work, but it's just a funny story how delay, Saturn gives you delay in all this stuff in life, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's shortly. It's interesting, yeah. How it all comes together, kind of in threes. It was like the business, and then the marriage, and then and then the health. There was also health problems, of course, because I was depressed, which is also Saturn thing, right? It can give you to depression. It took me 6 months of depression, so I wouldn't say it was a long time. But then I went to therapy, depression. I couldn't get up, and I didn't have income at that time as well because I had my own business and I couldn't work. I was so depressed. So I didn't have income. So think about it. It was shortage of money, shortage of support. It was a really, really rough time.
Jasmina, if we had a bingo card of all the possible flipping problems that could occur with a Saturn return, you'd have a full house, mate.
Winner.
I'm so sorry, but I mean, you tick all the boxes there. Like you mentioned failure loads of times. Sorry to laugh, because you're in school life as well.
But it is
the delays, the responsibility, sometimes moving back in with the parents and parent stuff going on, the poverty, i.e., like the money tightening up, the depression, illness. Flipping heck. Should we have a look at this? In fact, just before we do, let's just say hello to Nubinet. Hello from California. Hi, Nubinet. You've seen loads of our shows today, haven't you, my darling? Thank you. And makeup therapy. Hello from Scotland. Hello. So I don't know why I do silly voices when I talk about different people.
I love that. I actually love that.
You? I don't think makeup therapy talks like that. I don't think she goes.
No, I love that. I love it. My mom used to do it when we, there was a different dialects in Croatia. When she would go to her, she would change dialects as we were traveling through the country. I always thought it was funny. I love that.
I wonder if that's from where I've been reading out like Room on the Broom and all these different kids' books to my kids. So let's have a look at your story now, Jasmina. So you've described it. Now let's have a look at some of the astrological details. So it was in Leo, and like you said, it kicked your ass and it really bruised your ego. And it was in the 11th house, which is kind of interesting, given that it was about partners, like, partnerships and friendships and things like that, and associations. What I've done here is I've put down, it's interesting that you were talking about the shadow of the Saturn return and also how it advances. So I looked through my ephemeris and marked down when Saturn was 8 degrees before your Saturn. So that's the orb I've used. And when it passed your Saturn, and then when it got past the 8 degrees. Some people use a bigger orb. Some people use a tighter one. But
this is correct. Because I would tell, I know all the dates by heart, so I can tell exactly. So first of all, I got married on the October 29th, 2005, which Saturn was already in Leo.
Yeah. So Saturn was about here.
Yeah. So so I got married, and then a year after, so in the fall of 2009, so that would be. 2006. Sometimes in fall 2006, my marriage kind of started falling apart. We kind of distanced each other from each other. We were dating for 8.5 years. We were my whole 20s we were together, and then we kind of. Anyway, I wanted this marriage. I wasn't proposed. I had said to him, we're dating for 8 years. I want to get married. So that's anyway. You can't force stuff. I'm just telling you guys. You just. No, don't do it. And then in 2008, 6, and in the fall we start falling because I already had my business. I was working a lot, shifts, whatever. I was preparing fairs. We were doing. I wasn't at home as well. So there was anyway. There's always when something breakups come, there's responsibility on my part. I wasn't there for him. I'm not making excuses. I wasn't there for him. So he found somebody else. Okay. So I think he started. I think as my memory is correct, I think they started doing something together fall 2006. And then 2007 in the summer, me and my business partner, we were friends from high school, but I just felt that the things are not going as I wanted to. I felt overwhelmed, and I felt that I was doing a lot. I'm not saying that I was 100% correct now that I look at it. I didn't verbalize it. I didn't know how to communicate. And I'm thinking my progressed ascendant in Libra was kind of a people pleaser. So, anyway, and there is a Libra in my first house. So I was kind of more of a Libra person, avoiding conflicts, not building up stuff, not resolving them on time regarding my business and my friendship with that person, my friend, anyway. So that was, so at that point at summer, I thought I had support from my ex-husband to buy her out and anything. Anyway, so there was a lot of other stuff that, anyway, I don't want to go into details, but we broke up the partnership. I took over the company by myself. It was end of July, or I think beginning of August. So it was something like that. So it really, exact 25th July 2007. This was something like that. I know that then my ex-husband on the 16th of August told me that he's seeing somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the day. I remember August 16th.
I mean, that's big.
And then it's interesting. It starts separating on the 19th of September, and then I moved out on October 14th.
Wow. I mean, that all happened really quite fast, all things considered. Can I like, one of the things I noticed, and maybe Kimberly's got some thoughts as well, but like coming up to a Saturn return, if you're watching and you're coming up to a Saturn return, or know somebody that is, it's always worth checking out what Saturn, his condition is like in your chart. And obviously in Jasmina's chart, you can see that Saturn's in a tight conjunction with Mars. Now that can be quite energizing, but it's also quite hard work, I think. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it in a minute as well, but I think people with Saturn and Mars together can sometimes really be their own worst enemy in terms of being really hard on yourself. And having it in Leo and in the 11th, I imagine that you are quite competitive with yourself, and also want to improve. Now your Saturn and Mars is also in a square to your moon and Mercury, which is obviously going to be playing in a lot of sort of personal stuff. And you're born just before the new moon, which is kind of interesting. I quite like that's very energizing, like all this Gemini here. I love it. But you've also got this very strong, this very nice trine actually between these two to Neptune. So I would always look at these three planets, because as Saturn's coming into the return, here's Saturn on the outside ring, also making a square to Mercury and the moon in the night, and also trining Neptune, which is quite helpful. But then I think it's also interesting to look at what else is going on. So I've put these red markers here on the outside. You can't see this one at the bottom, but it's a red marker to Pluto, because Pluto's right down here, very close to this part of the home. And then Neptune here is in opposition, or coming into an opposition to Mars and Saturn, which would have been really quite challenging as well. That would have been adding a lot of confusion. It's interesting that you've got the 5th and the 11th really highlighted as well, because I always think it's a place that you're creating from, and also like your shared creations and how they can go wonky. I always think the 5th, where we're creating ourselves, sometimes our biggest fear is what happens when we have other people involved in it.
But 5th house is Leo, right, Louisa? So it's and my Saturn is in Leo, so that's the energy, right?
Yeah. I've got yours in the 11th. Have I got your wrong time of birth?
No. It's good, but I'm saying the 5th house in general, it's a Leo house, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So Neptune going through there is also triggering my confidence, my and then natally I have Sun opposing Neptune, always finding who am I in this world, finding myself. It was always a question, right? And with all this Gemini, I can be anything, which is also not helping, so. So I did question myself, who am I, what am I? And this was like a turning point of understanding, where am I going, having a revision. That time that I was alone, I had 4 years of being alone in between meeting my now husband. I really find it was necessary actually for me. It was necessary for me to find, because all this Neptunian energy and and Pluto and doing transformation in my home. It's interesting if you see in the transits, Venus was coming to South Node. That's letting go of partnerships, like in the transits, just in going through my 12th house on psychology and
Well, this is this is the first Saturn return we're looking at here. Should we have a look at the second one? I think
it's fine. But it started then. It started, because he already at that time I feel that he was already involved with this other woman.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what you mean. Yeah.
Right? I think he started September 2006.
Yeah.
As I remember timeline. And I had to tell you a fun fact now that I can laugh. She had the same name as me.
No way. Oh god.
Okay. I have to laugh now about it. Otherwise, anyway. It's so
funny the patterns that come up in people's charts and in people's lives in terms of love and stuff. My husband, who's a Cancer, married me. I'm born on the 20th of December. His ex-wife is born on the 19th of December. We don't have the same name, but we've both got our moon in Pisces as well, and our Venus in Capricorn. We got even though we're born 8 years apart, there's so many like shared things between his ex-wife and me. It's insane. There's all sorts of patterns.
I know, it's funny. I'm saying this was the period of separation. It doesn't come like this. So you have to understand this is a couple of years of energy, separating energy. And this is friendship. Like my ex-husband was my best friend at the time, and the friend I had business with, she was my friend from high school. So those were friendships that were dissolved. Those were like my fundamental two people that I had in my life, to go people, that were gone at that sense. And then Mars and Saturn together is not easy just because it gives you delay. It's never the way you want it when you want it,
Right.
Like I want it now, but no, and then of course there's a self-confidence issue. And then this Chiron in Taurus doesn't help. Am I worth? What is my value? Am I worth this? I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Yeah. Do I deserve happiness? Do I deserve this? There was a lot of, questions in that sense.
Did you, when you went through that process, because when I looked at it, I saw this like like the priests that do the self-flagellation thing. It was like you were just to yourself. And it through that, like it just felt like a lot of betrayal. And then not knowing who to trust anymore. So did you go through a process of doing a lot of self-discovery and work after all of that hit you?
Yes.
So in 2005 5 years of being with yourself was like trusting self and spirit, because that Neptune energy feels real supportive where it's at, and when you turn to trusting, the unseen to bring it in to the form for you, that then you're good.
That's when we started exploring. That's when I actually started exploring astrology more, and just get in tune with untangible things. Let's say because there's like even your relationship is tangible. You have this with somebody, right? So this is just with you and the divine, or finding yourself in a. There was a lot of I didn't escape to alcohol or drugs, thank God. But there was like escapism in it for a while. It took me, like I was playing cards online all night long. Like this was one of my escape things. not for money, but those, there was Facebook, there was like poker on Facebook and stuff. and played online like all night long. Like and I wouldn't, it was just part of my depression. It was just, like, it could be worse than that. I know with this Neptune, but it was some kind of a, which is interesting. In the fifth house, it was cards, right, and entertainment. So I didn't gamble. I didn't have money to gamble. Probably I would, but anyway. So it was just,
I got hooked on Spider Solitaire for many years and gave myself repetitive stress injury. So I completely understand. It's you just want to keep doing it, don't you? But
yeah, it wasn't. I didn't want to face reality in that sense and make any decisions. So it took me until 2009 in January, when I January to June. That's when I made some major decisions. I'm going to close the company. I'm going to start looking for a job. Let's do this. And then I started making changes. But the whole 2000, so from 2007, that summer, until end of 2008, which when I finalized my divorce, I finally said, okay, let's do it. Because at first I didn't want to divorce him. Oh, I don't want, it was just a bunch of stupid pride, I don't want to divorce, Anyway, it was just hanging on to the past, letting, it's a process, right? To understand what's going on. And Leo doesn't want to let go. It's also very proud, right? And it's hurt. So, it's fights until the end. So I was fighting for this marriage. I didn't want to let go, and then there's a Neptune. There's, you're delusional about it. Oh, when we're going to get back together, there's a bunch of stuff there. So it took me time. And then I started finalizing divorce 2008 in December and just making some decisions. And by June 2009, I felt so good. I got a new job. This is like a new chapter. I felt that, the new world is coming, a brand new world, as Aladdin would say, and Princess Jasmine and all this stuff. Yeah. So that was, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's great. There are going to be some shared themes coming up, I'm sure, with Kimberly's. I resonate so much with, how long it took for you to get back on track.
Yeah.
And the difficulties, because when we are in our 20s, I find, like, when I look back at my 20s, I think it's a really heady time where you're really trying to define yourself. And you spend all your life saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, and all this identity stuff. And, you're so in the process of building your life, often with partners and this, that, and the other. And it's a real slap around your face, isn't it, when it goes wrong? It's a very rude way.
Yeah. I mean, it was also, I'm going to, now that I look back, I took responsibility of not communicating well, issues on time, especially with my business partner. I feel that I didn't, I was, so there's a lot of immaturity in me as well for this. I can't blame it all to other people, right? So I wasn't mature enough. I was avoiding conflict. I was putting a bunch of stuff under the carpet and then denying it, this Neptunian thing, and just facing it. I said, okay, that's it. This is it. Your world is different. And then it takes time to build a new, it doesn't come overnight, because, I spent almost 10 years with this guy, right? Yes. And his family and our friendships to get, our together friends, just like a whole new world, everything, like all was gone, Yes. It was just like this. So for me, it was literally a brand new kind of life in that sense. But I'm, as I said, I'm taking responsibility. So, if I've done maybe some things different, I was all in business. I didn't neglect him. It's not an excuse, but I wasn't a wife I didn't also put energy into marriage that I should have. There's a bunch of other stuff, that, could have been done differently, but this was the way it was meant to be. Yeah. But it's also on me learning how to communicate better, what does it mean to have a business partnership, or even romantic partnership, in that sense that, how to react on time in a mature way, not like a kid. Oh, I want this now. And, you do this, and then, screaming and whatever. So there's a bunch of stuff that I learned that I hope that I'm doing now better.
Yeah. That is, we may well come back to this chart at some point, but what I really liked how your explanation of how things were going on internally in your chart and what was happening at the time is really obvious to see from the astrology. And you can see, and this happens in loads of people's returns. So, you know, Saturn starts to come in, it goes exact, it goes past, then it goes retrograde, and then, you know, goes like back beyond and then comes around and gives you a Saturn return. And that's what's happened in this example.
Yeah.
Kimberly, is it all right to come to you now?
Oh, sure.
Now, Kimberly's had 2 Saturn returns. So one in between 1988 and 89. And then a second Saturn return in 2018 to 2019, you know, from like when it's like starts coming in to when it ends. And her Saturn returns in the sign of Capricorn in the 3rd house. So it'd be interesting. I'm not looking at all the charts of your first Saturn return, because as you look here, you can see that Kimberly actually had 3 Saturn returns within her first Saturn return.
Yeah.
You know, so in fact,
I didn't realize that till today. When I went to look at it, I was like, holy shit.
So I think we're looking at the second one here from June the 10th, 1989. But essentially, like Saturn came up, got up there, went retrograde, went past it, went retrograde again, direct or something like that. Now, in Kimberly's chart, you can also see that when her, you know, first of all, let's have a look at the quality of her Saturn, like what's it connected to. Lots of lovely kind of easy connections there. So Venus, it's lovely sextile to Neptune and also to the ascendant. She's got this lovely trine to Pluto, and also the North Node. She's also got this lovely trine to the Moon, and also an opposition to Mars, which is interesting that you've got a Mars and Saturn theme, because obviously Jasmina has Mars and Saturn in a conjunction, and you've got yours in opposition. So that's kind of interesting. So you've got really quite good conditions, I would say, of your Saturn, and it's in its own sign as well. Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn at birth, and Saturn's obviously, you know, the ruler of Capricorn. So that's really good. But at the time of your return, not only was Saturn there, but you also had Neptune over your Saturn in an exact conjunction. So,
yeah, the 89 generation. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And then you had your North Node over Chiron as well, down there. And then Pluto had just recently crossed your ascendant, was also in a conjunction with Venus. That's pretty intense. Like having Pluto going, I mean, this is a whole other story, really. But talk us through what was going on for you in your first Saturn return.
Somewhere in that time period, okay? Because I was trying to remember the exact dates, and it's like, oh, I don't remember them now. But I was at a party that got busted, and it literally had, remember those old hardback brown Samsonite suitcases? Do you all remember those?
Yep.
It had suitcases of cocaine under a bed. And they took all of us to jail. And, you know, because I really didn't know it was there. I mean, I knew that there was a party, but I didn't really know at that level. And so they took us all to jail, and, you know, because they wanted somebody to narc on somebody. And it's like they tried to, put, what do you call it, when you're trafficking on everybody, and they couldn't because we didn't live there. And so I had to go through all of that. I had to go through all that grow up period. Like my friends that, you know, that it was their apartment, you know, they did time over it, you know. It was like, so I went through that. And so that's that, you know, growing up. And
that is growing up.
Yeah, I was a medical technologist, so I worked in hospital laboratories. You know, I had a real job. And somewhere when all of that happened, and I quit partying, and at the same time I was going through these transitions, I used to show dogs. And at the same time, like all that world was falling apart, I won the national specialty in golden retrievers, which is like a really highly contested breed.
Wow, well done. Yeah.
And I did it all, you know, owner handler, which was like unheard of. And I was so naive. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just loved my dog, and I walked in and won the whole thing. So I had like that part falling apart because it was time, you know, to grow up. And this was happening like this overnight success. And I didn't want to work in the hospital anymore. And by the 89 time period, I left that 10 years. I had been at, when you said 10 years with your relationship, I had been at that hospital for 10 years. And I left that hospital and went to a diagnostic clinic lab, you know, that I mean, it had like 60 doctors there, but it was so I could work Monday through Fridays without weekends. And so I did that career change, and I wanted weekends off and all of that kind of stuff. And I went straight into being just bacteriology supervisor. So I was in this little cubby hole with all my, you know, specimens to myself, and I didn't have to deal with the rest of them. Nobody wants to come in bacteriology. It stinks in there.
Do you know what? It's amazing you kept your job during that time, because you think with the drugs bust, you could have been
there wasn't anything that really did. I mean, I told them, you know, because it was in the newspapers and stuff, because they did big drug raid sweep, evidently, and there were a lot of people that got busted like during that time period.
But I was going to say Neptune. This is so Neptunian.
And it's so true to a bad girl as well.
It was like I was running around with people that were doing coke, but I never liked. It wasn't my thing. It was like I didn't. You know, I was just hanging out with them.
But it's so interesting, Saturn and Neptune coming together. Like literally, you had to be responsible for some Neptunian drug thing. You were held into jail. It's so funny.
And it's interesting those little children, like a school desk, you know, like for like first or second graders, so that it would be so uncomfortable for us, and kept us up the whole night with their arms handcuffed behind us.
Was the party with your neighbors? Did you have a party at neighbor's house? Because in the third house, maybe
it was my friends. It was my best friends at that time. It's whose house I was at. They were like,
somebody local, right? Something, you know, in your local environment.
Oh God. I mean, that's completely like red in your chart, isn't it? You know,
and when I realized about Saturn Returns later, I was like, oh my God, that was that whole time period that, you know, and so that world like collapsed fast, and all my friends were gone. You know, they were in prison.
And it's interesting, Kimberly. It's interesting how you said that you were naive. That's also Neptunian. You know, that's so Neptunian. You know, you felt naive. You know, you didn't. You know, with this everything, with dog shows, everything. You just felt naive. Who was taking drugs? You know, like what is happening? Like so Neptunian. Like you know,
it was like pure innocence of just going along with everything, and all this stuff was happening around me. So it is that time period. You know, it was that time period of that, and I changed that job, which was, you know, none of those people knew anything about me, and I never fit in with any of them. And I was looking at that with that Capricorn and Saturn. I do have dyslexia. It's like I say words backwards sometimes, and if I start talking too fast, and I was like bullied for my, you know, Southern accent, and I went through years of getting rid of it, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? That's what people remember me, because I'm like that redheaded Southern girl. So who cares? Yeah. So that part, you know, has been there. I was doing that. So yeah, that's what's happened. That's what happened in that first one.
I also love like the very rock and roll Pluto over your ascendant. You know, because he's in the first house as well, like really like kicking up some shit about your sort of identity, like real mean girl type stuff. But you've also got like your nodes as well. Like, so your north node, the north node was right over your Chiron.
Right.
And then you've got this Chiron Venus conjunction with Mars in your chart. And of course, Mars is also in opposition to your Saturn. You've also got the south node coming into a conjunction with Uranus. It's like, you know, you've got, I find it interesting. You've got some like two different Chiron connections going on at the same time as that, showing a certain amount of, you know, painful learning.
It was so funny, you all, when they, like a grand jury indicted us, okay? So I had to go to the grand jury to see if they were going to indict us for trafficking. And I walked in, like, I remember like having this like totally conservative, like, you know, Rebecca from Sunnybrook's farm thing. I can remember I had this like plaid green and purple, you know, skirt with this blazer and the button up granny neck collar, you know. So, and I'll never forget those people's faces when I walked into the grand jury, you had to sit in there with him at this long table when they asked you questions.
Wow.
And I remember like all of these, you know, adult people that their mouths just kind of dropped open because, you know, here was like, oh my God, this could be my daughter. You know, I could feel it and see it in them.
Oh my God.
And so I just like totally played this, you know, innocent to
I'm just thinking also how this Saturn is actually the transiting Saturn return, how it was opposing your natal Mars, right?
Yeah.
And then in the ninth house, which is court and law, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was activating that action.
I wish I knew that, you know, because when you go through something like that, you don't want to remember those dates. Now I wish I knew the exact dates.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it funny? Like, you know, when you're like working not retrograde, but like using like the hindsight to look at all the things that have happened in your life, and then looking at the charts of what was going on. We're joined by Stieglitz and Things with Wings, which is a great YouTube name.
Yeah,
good evening, ladies. Greetings from Scorpio Mars, Virgo Moon. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Reminds me like Miami vibes. It is very Miami vibes. And it's interesting that you turn up just as we're looking at Kimberly's rock and roll Saturn Return first month.
Yes, really rock and roll. I love that.
I have Neptune in the first house of Mercury at 0:40 minutes. So that's interesting. And good evening, ladies. So, right. Should we have a look at your second Saturn return? Because I'm wondering, you know, obviously this was quite a big occurrence. And again, it went from, you know, obviously when we were looking at Jasmina's, it was essentially coming in from September 2006 and kind of really ending towards the end of September 2007, just over a year. With your first one, it was from the end of 88, 89, and then ending at the end of 1990, because it happened 3 times, and that middle one was the
so my question, Kimberly, what did you learn from this one? Like, what was your lesson?
Well, it was that, you know, to not be at parties doing drugs all night, or, you know, or at parties that they
no more parties.
And you know, and I knew, I mean, really, I knew my friends were probably, you know, I knew they were selling coke, but I didn't know it was at that level. You know, I thought it was just little, you know, little whatever you call that, 8 balls or something here and there. And it's like, I didn't even know what an 8 ball meant. And but when
I don't now.
There were suitcases under the bed. And I had been in there in the bedroom with the, you know, the girl that lived there that night, because she went, come in here, I've got something. And she was hiding lines from her husband. We were all married, because we all married, you know, young in life. And she was hiding it from him. And then he was hiding it from her, because he was like giving people little, you know, and I thought, oh man, I remember thinking they're really into this a lot more than I realized, because they're hiding it from each other so that they can have their own little stash. And I remember thinking, this is not good. And about the times, you know, somebody starts knocking on the front door, and it's the police coming in. And we were playing cards. We were playing cards that night, and there was these 2 guys that came and played for a while. We were just playing pitch, you know. It was, you know, we were just playing spades or something. I don't know. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't like it was poker or something. And those 2 guys left, and right after that, the police came. So I think they narked.
Yeah.
I think that they were informed, you know, that they probably had got in trouble themselves, and because everybody knew them. And I felt because it happened too fast. So I think they must have told them. And when the police came, they came in the front door and the back door at the same time. Like the apartment had 2 doors, and they were at both doors at the same time.
So my question, sorry, Lisa, my question is, did you choose your friends better after this experience? Was this a lesson of your Saturn return?
Yeah, well, I just really turned to my dogs, you know, because I was showing the dogs too. And then all of that happened kind of like simultaneously at the same time. And I went into like, I lived in the country. We had like a garden, and I was like canning and was like, you know, doing all this stuff with just going into the dog world and what that was. And because that's a whole crazy world within itself. It's like, and like that. There's a movie that's it's called The Dog Show, I think, and it's actually hysterical, and it really is the way that world is. And so I would totally like just went into that addiction.
Like, I feel that your Saturn return was really clouded by Neptune as well, so it's very strong.
I did a lot of drugs my whole life, but I never was addicted to anything. I had the experimental, let's try, oh, sure, I'll try that. But I didn't like any of it. It was just like, oh, well, that was okay, and I couldn't ever understand how people got addicted, because I just like experimented, but I never like wanted to do it again after the first time.
I think with Neptune, Mercury in your 12th, I think you're high enough without drugs and opposing your moon. I think you have this natural high.
I mean, like you've got Neptune right on your ascendant. We're getting some great and funny comments in, actually. So Stiglitz is saying, it's that time of year again. Make way for the Coke trucks.
Exactly. So anyway, I mean, I'm an open book with all of it. That's what happened.
And never go to Coke.
And somebody, like, we didn't know how we were going to get out of jail. Like, there was bond and all that stuff. And we didn't have cell phones back then. And so
I would shit my pants.
Somebody that had been there, they had left early. And I don't know how my ex got a hold of these friends. And I don't know how I don't even know how any of this went down, you all. Neptune.
That's why you don't know anything. You think you blocked it.
They called my parents, and I was sitting that next morning like I'm sitting in the cell.
Oh my God.
And they said that somebody came to pay my bond, and that I was being released. And
who was it?
Like, I didn't know who had even paid it. All I knew was like, bye you all, Wow. And when I went downstairs, it was my parents. So you can imagine, what that was and what that was for.
That's a big Saturn return, isn't it? When your parents.
About when Jasmina was talking about, going back to her dad's, because the impact it has on your parents when you're going through your Saturn return. Because my parents had to come bail me out of jail.
Can you imagine? You're not underage, or you were not 18 or 16. You were like 29, 30. You're like, what is happening?
You're 28. Yeah, I was 28, 29, and it was and my parents had to come bail me out of jail because I was, I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and basically, and so that happened.
I know it's not funny, but it's funny. I don't know.
Parents got involved, Dad.
And when this part happened, so the next day, you've been up all night and all that. So my parents was driving us home. And I remember the sky was like all cloudy and dark, and it was all this luminous, it was weird. And I was praying. I was going, God, if you will get me out of this, I will do anything for you. And the sky opened up, and this light went straight into my third eye. And I remember this happening.
Were you still on drugs? Were you still high?
It's like it went through my whole body. And he's actually deceased, but my then husband, which ended up later being my ex-husband, I looked at him and I went, oh my God, did you see that light? It's gone. And he went, oh, shut the fuck up. You're just hungover.
Wow. That was
and I always thought, because those whole years in that time period is also what they called the harmonic, conversion later, that happened in 88. And so I always thought that was when, like, we signed up. Like, I signed up to do my spiritual path that day.
Yes.
And I knew that later, it's like, that's the day that I signed up, that I would do whatever for humanity. You just get me out of this.
If you don't mind me saying, like, that is like the Saturn, your whole story there is the Saturn Neptune story.
Yeah.
So first of all, there's a drugs bust. And get like Jasmina's right, you've got your Neptune right on your ascendant as well. So you're probably quite trippy. Anyway. You got like Saturn Neptune, so there's a drugs bust at a party with your friends in the neighborhood. And it ends up with your parents bailing you out, because I always think Neptune often shows where we become a victim as well. or you know, where we can be a bit lower, and the Saturn comes in, you know, parents come into
my dad has to come and bail me out.
and also like Jasmina said, you know, Neptune representing naivety and Saturn coming in and teaching you about it, and then right at the end of it having a spiritual experience, and then setting on a like a Neptune Saturn path, you know, because Saturn, it does give you structure, it does give you that determination and discernment.
Right.
Oh yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can we have a look at your second Saturn return now?
Yeah, I'm curious what happened then.
I think I did so much work. That's why I asked you if you did a lot of self work, because that, you know, that happened. And then, you know, because I've been now comparing it to the Mars cycles, you know, since we've been doing all this Mars cycle stuff, because I thought all that was Saturn return. Maybe it was the Mars cycles.
Yeah.
So I've been like looking at all of that in with it. And when you were talking about your own, you know, going back to your dad and all that, I mean, I went through mine, and right after that, my daughter's partner went through his, and he left my daughter for somebody else, you know, and here they had a child, and then she kicked hers in. So it felt like that Saturn return lasted forever, because it wasn't really mine. It was like what was happening to everybody else around me and how it affected me. So on that second one, you know, that's when it's like it's your kids that theirs are like seem to have a jolt to you. I don't know. It was interesting, because I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about how much that first Saturn return kicks the crap out of your own parents.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
I wonder if it's the same for you guys, but I've been working quite a lot with people going through their second Saturn return, and so many of them have got a child going through their first Saturn return at the same time.
Right.
Incredible.
Ours was pretty close together. So it was like mine just ended, and then her partner's, his and mine overlapped, and then she went into hers. So it felt like it was just like all of that wham, 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 one thing after another. And that was during the time period that I came back here, you know, that I was off living in, and I came back here, and I had been settled in here for probably about a year when that kicked in. And that was the time period that I really went into human design. And deciding to do, you know, sharing, like astrology had always been a thing for me. It was just for me. I didn't even want to share my astrology and my knowings with anybody else, because it was the only modality that I had ever done just for myself. Like I just wanted to know about myself. And so that was during that one. It's when, you know, right after that COVID happened and everything else, we're all sitting here at home. And it was like I threw myself in my studies with astrology and human design, of really understanding it and diving into it, instead of just like playing with it, jumping out, you know, doing this with it, mixing all kinds of other stuff in with it.
So you're saying this was more about your daughter. So your second returns are hard, maybe. I think I'm trying to understand the second return. So it doesn't have to be about you. It can be about your daughter, about your kids, or something else happening.
Because all of that was going on with them. And then for me, I felt like I remember thinking, oh, it's just my Saturn return. I've done so much work. I don't have any karma left. I'm not going to get hit with stuff. And I felt that way.
To laugh, because, you know,
I did. And I was kind of like looking forward to it. I was like looking forward to it, to see what the structure was that was coming and how Saturn was going to support me. And I looked at it that way. And I really
which you did, Kimberly. Yeah, which is in the third house also of learning, right? This is third house also of learning, right? So, and then you have Uranus going through a sixth. This is something new in your work, you know, which I love. And it's almost Uranus trine Uranus with your natal one. It's almost like that, I feel.
Well, I think I really think that there's some nice aspects that are going on in your 50s, really helping you to feel like, you're making it, you know, like when you get your Pluto trine and your Uranus trine, I think they're really, really helpful. You're also, of course, you know, around the time of the second Saturn return, you may well be having your, you know, another Jupiter return.
Right.
And yours was coming up. So that was already in the bank. It's interesting you got Neptune on your South Node at the same time. So, like, what were you learning? Like, was there a really intense learning experience? You know, aside from what you were actually physically learning, like human design, and you know, were there any sort of big dramas and things in your?
No, it didn't seem. I mean, it was affecting my life because it was in everybody else's life.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was that whole time period. Like 2017 was when my brother died, my granddaughter was born, and I left Sedona and came here. And then that first year, I was still in and out and didn't have a place. I hadn't claimed this house back yet. I was, you know, letting my daughter stay here. And then I claimed the house back. So then that, like, February 2018 was when I moved back into this house. Well, it was really about March, because I went to Hawaii for like a month or two. And when I came back from Hawaii, I came into this house and I started restructuring this house.
Oh,
like
wow.
I did my own hardwood floors myself. You know, it was like, I was like creating my own space. It was the first time in my life that I actually started putting my own paintings around me and surrounding me with it, you know, because Mom and my daughter was like, you paint so weird. What is any of that stuff supposed to be? And it was the first time I had my own space that I could put all of my, you know, I didn't care what anybody else thought anymore. I wasn't trying to be anything for anybody else. So I claimed my house back. You know, it was like I came back to home and claimed my house back.
Do you know what else I'm hearing there from what you're saying? Because, like, you know, the first Saturn return, I think, really destabilizes us, doesn't it? And it shakes us up in terms of who we are. Like, you know, I always think, you know, if you're not taking in enough responsibility by the time of your first Saturn return, more responsibility comes on you. And if you're taking on too much, you lose it, don't you? But hopefully, like, I'm hoping that by the time my next Saturn return comes around, it's more about me claiming who I am.
Yeah, that's what it felt like to me. It was about me claiming who I was.
Like, you're claiming your house, you're claiming your skills.
Claiming your authority. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's that. And I do, you know, when you understand about it and, you know, you have this time period and it's like, so you're burning all your karma off. So it's like, you don't get hit in the face with your karma. It's like, and I'm actually last year and this year, I'm in a Saturn perfection house. It's like, and so I actually, when I saw that, I was glad. I was like, I used to hate Saturn. And now I'm like, I want this structure. I want to utilize the energy, you know, to do my legacy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I mean, by the time of your second Saturn return, you've had your Chiron return already, which would have kicked your ass. Or, you know, usually. So, I mean, that's just brilliant. I mean, I'm guessing, you know, we should be, you know, if we're not more relaxed in our life, by the time we get to our second Saturn return, we've really got a lot to do, haven't we? I love that. So
we've got the period I'm in right now. You know, I was thinking about that with the Saturn stuff, because actually Chiron has been right on top of my Saturn. And I thought, oh, no wonder I'm going through this with family stuff. And my parents, I don't know their birth times. I don't know if they know them or not. I just need to ask them. But my parents are probably going through their third Saturn return.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I'm looking at it at that place when your parents are going through their third one, and then how that burden of responsibility is like, you know, laid on you. It's like, so there's it's interesting in watching it at this perspective and seeing how the family dynamics of the Saturn stuff, you know, layer together too.
So interesting. So the first one is about you, second one about your kids, and the third one about your parents.
If you still have all those people around.
Yeah,
it can be. There's overlays of all of that there.
Linking that like how you did there, Jasmina, like right now, you're not necessarily learning about taking on more responsibility, though you might have some responsibility to your parents, but you're also helping your daughter understand responsibility as well as she's going through hers.
And you were freshly a grandparent, right? You said 2017, so you were. That's a responsibility. You know, many people becoming a grandparent is another role of authority. that you have.
And during that time period, that's why I was like not claiming the house back. I was like, sacrificing to everybody else. And then all of a sudden I was like, if I'm going to help you all, I have to have a stable environment to live in, and I went to my father and I was like, help her buy a house now. And he's like, it's your inheritance. I said, I don't care. I'm not going to live if she doesn't. If it's like I won't get an inheritance. So I went to them and did that. And then, she was going through her Saturn return. So all of that's happened. So it's interesting. So it feels like I was in it, then she was in, like her partner was in it, she was in it, and I feel like my parents are probably in their third ones. So it's been like.
This is actually useful preparation because my husband's going into his second one soon. So we've got some comments coming in. So Makeup Therapy saying, my Saturn's in Virgo and this year was so intensive for me. Thank you for that.
It hits
I
you.
wonder where. I think you've said before, Makeup Therapy, you got Scorpio rising. Is that right? So that was yours in your 11th house? Or your 10th house. Wonder how it went for you. Stieglitz is saying Saturn's harsh, stern, but fair ruler, the original son, the first son, the best son. He is the outcast, the sad ruler of time, Kronos, father of the golden age.
Yeah.
When I think of him, I do like him. I do notice, I really like this. Well, I find it interesting, like when you look at the story of Uranus, Saturn, all his children, how he was eating all his children, and how his wife Ops hid Jupiter in a cave so that Jupiter could survive, gave him a stone. So at some level, Saturn is so scared of being overtaken that he's killing his own children. And he also castrates his father, like Uranus, and turns him, just cuts him off from his power. Saturn is harsh. He really does want to have that authority.
There's no mercy. No mercy, This is the rule. These are the rules. If you don't obey the rules, you get punished. That's it. There's no, it's black and white. These are, you follow the rules or you don't, right?
I mean, I like when I think of Saturn, in mythology, he does sound like a badass kind of nasty parent, like a judgmental parent. That's like, he makes the judgments and then he enacts his punishment on you. But I also think of all the great parents out there, and I think a well-aspected Saturn is a great parent. It's somebody who can encourage you, really help to develop you. I really like that. I feel a little bit embarrassed now because my Saturn return story is just not anywhere near as entertaining as either of yours.
Oh, thank God.
I feel really insecure now. No. So I've just had one, and it's in the sign of Cancer. It's up here, as you can see. It's my Saturn return. And at the time so basically, it started applying in August, and by August of the next year, it moved on. It came close almost into the Saturn return and then kind of went backwards. And then I got my Saturn return on the 8th of July. Now, as you can see, and it'd be interesting to see what you see in these charts, but I've got at the time of it, I had had the nodes going over my ascendant and descendant. So south node over my ascendant, north node over my descendant. I was getting absolutely pounded by Pluto, and Pluto had very slowly taken a nice little trip through here, was yet to come to this point. This comes a bit later in the story. And I had Uranus down here, applying to my moon and Jupiter. But as you can see, my Saturn's in a square to Chiron.
To be honest, when I look at Louisa, when I look at this chart, sorry to interrupt you. First thing that it's something to do with partnerships at home. That was my first, it was, that was my first thing, right? Because so many triggers are showing that. And there's Venus over transiting over the south node in your 8th house.
Yes.
So I'm thinking there's one with partner and home, something there. I don't know. That would be my first thing. So what happened?
Yeah. Well, Well, where would like you, Jasmina, your divorce and business, it all sort of came apart at the same time almost, you know, within a few months, everything had started to, like, your story had become solid and you knew what you were doing. And it took a little while longer to separate, and then quite a few years to start to feel good again. And with Kimberly, it was kind of on you in one go with that great big drugs past. Which I'm always, whenever I think of Saturn Returns now, I'm always going to have a little giggle, by the way.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah. And thank goodness you've got the other side of it. With me, because I'd had Pluto in the lead up to this, like slowly going over these things, and I was in a long-term relationship, and it wasn't really going where I wanted it to go. I'm going to take responsibility. Like you, Jasmina, I was always hoping it was going to end in marriage. And we booked a date to get married, which was actually the following year. As it turned out, we didn't get married. I'd been ill. I basically, leading into this time, really wanting like partnership to go in a particular way. And he kept putting it off and saying, look, we need a bigger house. We need more rooms. We need this, that, and the other. And then when we've got all that in place, let's get married and have kids. And so I was working my nuts off, taking on loads of extra work. So I was always taking on responsibility. And I guess you can see that with Pluto going through my second.
Yeah.
Boring, more and more and more and more. And I basically got myself really ill. And so I was off work for 13 months leading up to my Saturn return. And then around the time of my Saturn return, my partner basically told me he didn't love me anymore and wanted to split. And so it was, it was a very sort of disconfirming time. And like so there's nothing really dramatic other than
it is. I mean, breakup. I know, but breakups are dramatic, especially when you, as I said, you invest time in a relationship, not in time, yourself. Yeah. And then then you feel like, what was this all about? Like, what didn't see? Was I stupid? You doubt yourself, your judgment. That's the problem. I feel like that's what you're kind of trying to doubt yourself. Yeah, this is also, that's a lesson how to, that's, I think later in life with experience you don't do that anymore, or it's less, at least, right? I think you went through it to learn that stuff, so you have better judgment later.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean during this time I was, like you said, Jasmina, you were like really lively in your job and you had lots of fun things as well. I mean, I was like go, and throughout my 20s, I didn't have businesses, but I ran businesses for different people, like quite enterprising things, and so I was always on the go. And I was also working as a trainer as well. So like doing loads of teaching and stuff like that, which I loved and felt very energized by. But what really came out with my Saturn return, I think, was this feeling of really not being good enough. With the Saturn Venus, the opposition really, whatever my biggest fear was, like not being lovable enough, was just absolutely there and raw. And it's almost like I now wonder if I got ill almost to see how far he would be devoted to stay with me. I know it sounds probably like a load of old shit, but like I really believe in the connection between our emotions and our physical health. And leading up to this time, I kept saying, I can't see how this is going to work. And I really loved him and wanted to stay with him, but I knew that what I wanted and he wanted were just not going to happen. And so I was thinking, how can I make this work? How can I make this work? And I didn't know what my next step was. And so I kept saying to myself, I can't see my next step. I can't see my next step. I don't know what step to take. And then lo and behold, I was in bed for 13 months with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was part of a hospital study, doing drug trials and things like that. I was really quite poorly and had absolutely zero energy at all.
And did you have any support from him at that time?
Wow.
Not really. That's the problem. Yeah. I think that was the thing. You felt it. You knew it.
I felt very, very isolated by it. I mean, and we were really good friends. And towards the end of it, like he didn't see me as a romantic partner because obviously I've been ill, and it was just too much for him. And I guess, you know, we go through illnesses and downtimes with our partners when we're really invested in them, and some relationships aren't aren't going to work. You know, we've both now like got married and gone different ways. We've both got our families and stuff. And it's all cleared up very nicely, but it was kind of difficult to break that friendship apart. And like you, Jasmina, talking about, you know, being part of his family.
Yeah.
You know, I knew his family. I'm still in touch with his mum and his sister quite a bit. You know, so it was like a whole like it was 11 years we were together. So it was a lot of stuff to shift. He's actually a Capricorn as well, and so all of this was really. It's interesting that he was a Capricorn, and we're now married to a Cancerian, but still playing on this axis.
But
in fact, husband's sun is right here on my Saturn.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting how you said that you look at the condition of your Saturn. So the condition of your Saturn is not good. It's in Cancer in retrograde. I mean, can it be more, you know, and inflicted than this? And then it's squaring Chiron and squaring Pluto.
Yeah.
Is it? Yes. So like, it's so now when it came back, those squares were triggered, right? Transformation, hurt, your worth. This is exactly what happened, right? So of course, and Chiron is in the 6th house of your health.
Yeah,
you know, and friendships, Pluto, friendship house. So that's what it is. Yeah. So you know, and it wasn't easy. I wouldn't say it was easy for you. Maybe it's not a fun story, but it wasn't easy. Don't tell me. No. It's hard. It's long-term relationship that they break. It doesn't have to be a marriage. It was like marriage. You live together, right?
Oh yeah, we had a house together and joint.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is hard.
Yeah, it's just as hard.
Yeah. I mean, and also like with my moon and Jupiter in Pisces in a trine Saturn, no matter how hard it got, I still wanted to be really good friends. And even though it was like really painful and we went to counseling and this, that, and the other, and it was ripping me apart, I didn't want to be a bitch or be nasty or act out. And so there's so much repression in it. And you know, obviously it did break down fully, not quite at this time because there was a bit more to go. but
Saturn, Luisa, I have to. Sorry again for interruption, but Saturn in Cancer has a problem with taking responsibility with their emotional wealth as well. You know,
that's a good comment,
right? Because you said you felt, you know, so you had that, you know, you didn't want to take responsibility. So this is what was your lesson. Yeah, this was your Saturn return lesson: how to take responsibility for your emotional well-being.
Yeah,
not projecting on your partner or somebody else in your life.
That's really helpful, actually. I've never ever seen it like that. Isn't it funny how, like, you can look at your own chart so many times? Sometimes you need someone else to look at it for you.
Yeah, I think that was your lesson. I mean, learning. I mean, your maturity. You're growing up. You know,
it still is. It still
is. Because Moon in Pisces will always, especially with Jupiter there, it's going to be overwhelming. That, you know, sense of victim sometimes when you feel when it feels good that you're going to use that card, then you're going to use it. And with Jupiter there, it can be over the top sometimes, right? But then this was maybe a time that you kind of learn to do it. Anyway, that just occurred to me.
Discernment's an interesting one. I need to learn all the time. And like the ruler of obviously my Aquarian I see at the bottom is both Saturn and Uranus, and Uranus is here in my 4th house, kind of destroying the home. So the other chart I wanted to share is just this one, which was the after effects of, like, you know how you were saying you were it took a few years for everything to clear. when things cleared for me, and when we finally really made the break properly and moved out of house, you know, like we really separated our assets and stuff. I had Jupiter right on my ascendant, had Mars going over my midheaven, and Pluto was like
on your sun.
It was really, really close to my sun. And then Uranus had just gone over here. So it took a while. Yeah. So it's quite an intense time.
Yeah, it is intense. Yeah, it's not easy, you know. Learning our lessons.
Yeah. So if we were to, we've got more people joining us. Let me just say hello to a few people. Let's say hello to a few people. So who have we got here? Yeah, so makeup therapy saying yes, it was in. So you've had yours in your 10th house. I wonder what was going on for you. Sparkles of Gold. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Nicholas.
We got Terry Burton joining us as well with a hi,
Hey,
ladies.
Terry.
Hi, Terry.
Hi.
And like we've got waving hands at each other. That's really nice. So, like, what are your last impressions then of your Saturn returns? And like as we've gone back to our Saturn returns, what have we learned from them? What could we share with others that might help them?
You have to strategize. I heard Frank Clifford, and he's an astrologer. He always says, how to prepare for transits, you have to strategize. Yeah. So have a good strategy. Okay. Yeah. Look at the house, look at the sign, look at the aspects, what it's doing in your chart, and then just think what's going to be triggered. Like in your case, your Saturn triggered those squares, right? So you can't fully prepare for it. But awareness gives you a little peace of mind, let's say. You're still going to go through it, but it kind of gives you and if just please have astrologer help you to guide you through it. There's many of us who are willing to guide you through that and explain in more detail what is it doing for you specifically. I would say that's what it is.
Just as you were saying that, sorry, I just was panning ahead thinking, oh, let's strategize for my next one, which is obviously a little way away. But
the more self-work that you do, the more self-work you do on yourself and clearing out and being responsible and clearing out all of that old karmic crap that we came in with, then it's a whole lot easier ride. I mean, and that's true about everything. It's like taking self-responsibility for your own, cause and effect.
Well, I'm gonna take heed of what you're saying. That with Saturn, I love that you were laughing and the quality of my Saturn. But it's interesting because my second Saturn return will be on my husband's sun. So I need to make sure everything's up straight there.
Yeah, with him. Yeah. Just having. I will tell you a story. So go on. One of my friends now, she met a guy. She's single. She met a guy, and he's going through his first Saturn return, and he kind of broke up with her because he's going through his things, and she doesn't understand what did she do. And I told her it's not you. It's he's going through tough time. It's just the timing. So sometimes you can't force it. That's also what I learned maybe from my Saturn return. You have to choose which battles you need to let go of and which to fight.
Yeah. I tried to give advice to my daughter and her partner because, they had went through a lot because my granddaughter came in with complications and she was in the preemie thing and had 3 surgeries. And, I was looking at that on my thing. Actually, her last surgery was like when my second Saturn return started. It was during that time period. And that was one reason I was letting them stay in the house. And I tried to, when I saw that Saturn return was kicking them and that they had all this on top of it, but they couldn't hear me, because they didn't come to me. I was going to them going, this is coming. And, and you'll make it through it. Just know it's this time in your life.
Yeah.
And when I look back on it, when we go through those kind of breakups, it's because it's destiny. It's part of it. It's like it wasn't our, it could be in some fated path that we could have stayed in some downward spiral, but the destiny takes over and moves us out of it. So it's like it just kind of does it. And I did have I remembered something that happened in that second one that I don't know why I forgot about this. This is like pretty big. My ex-husband died. And so I actually received dead man money now. So I got supported by the universe during that time period. It's like the Social Security office called me and got in I called them and anyway, like I had a back pay. I had like a big check that just like dropped into my lap during that time period. And that was when I had just came back here and I wasn't going to do brick and mortar. I was totally, on the internet,
so there you go.
That way.
So Kim, this is now a good point that if you do work hard, which you did, and did everything right, then your actually especially second one can reward you. You know, I think the second one shouldn't be that hard. I mean, if you did everything right, even gives you reward. This is exactly what Saturn does.
Yeah, it's like a grandfather then. It's the grandfather that goes, oh, here. And
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to start working for that outcome.
Yeah.
I love that. I guess something else, with Saturn is, it's a hard teacher, but it's also the voice in your own head, isn't it? We always have these voices in our heads, and they might be our parents, they might be authority, they might be our teachers. You'll never amount to this or whatever. But we get to choose which voice we have in our head, don't we? And we might not quite fully understand what we've got going on and how amazing our brain is. We might not have quite that level of discernment in our 20s, but by the time we get to our late 50s, it's quite a good thing to aim for.
We're not trying to be everything for everybody else as much anymore,
So I'm hearing a lot of discernment and pulling back, reclaiming our power, and getting a lot more stable. And of course, by the time you're in your late 50s, you're probably a lot happier to have proper stability. If I think about the stability I had, I was in such a rush in my 20s to develop things and grow things that it wasn't real proper stability. It was stability for status sake, but not real honest stability.
Louisa, you just reminded me with the rush thing. In your 20s, you feel that you don't have time. Like, oh my God, I don't have time. If I don't do it now, my life is done. And then when you go in your 40s and later 50s, you have the whole time in the world. I just feel that the even the time as a thing doesn't exist in my life anymore.
Yeah.
I don't feel time as an issue in my 20s. Oh my God, I don't have time. If I don't do it now, I never it's that kind of, that's what you have to learn to manage time, to understand what time is. This is also one of the lessons you learn with the Saturn return.
Yeah,
I feel.
Yeah, really good. Wow. Thank you so very much. Have you got anything you'd like to share with us about what's going on for you?
I'm gonna quickly promote I'm doing a workshop on elemental balance in January. So you don't need to know any astrology for this workshop. You can check everything on my website, jasminaastrology.com. It's going to be live, and I'm going to have small groups. We're going to talk. I'm going to give some tips for your chart specifically. What is missing, and just basic elements and modes, and how this paints a picture of your chart and of your life, your temperament, and how you approach life. So some tips on that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Kimberly?
That's a good one. I don't have anything right. I've got some things in my head that I'm bringing in from the formless in. And so just watch. and I'll announce what's coming up. I've been thinking about doing something with this whole Mercury retrograde, and just yesterday on my thing, Neptune I'm having an affair with Neptune right now. so I'm like about how to teach people how to really use their alchemy, like what you're talking about, going into that, and how do we use this instead of it's just like, oh, we're on this wheel and it's we're getting slapped up against the side of the head with this, when it's not true. It's like, take the energy and use it for yourself. Beautiful. So I got some stuff coming up that way. And I want to do both of, if you all want to play with me, I want to do both of your human design charts sometime. So let's do that.
Yes. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You and I are both split projectors, aren't we, Kimberly?
Yeah. We're both 60 projectors. What are you?
I'm MG, or what is it? Manifest generator. Yes.
Do you know what your profile is?
3-5.
Okay.
I think 3-5. Yeah, I don't understand it very well. What does that mean? But it's 3-5. Yeah.
Well, that's for another show, eh?
Yeah, that's right. We'll do that.
Please organize that.
I want to with people that really understand astrology, so they can, do the comparison of how do you see this lining up with what in astrology with it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, ladies. I really appreciate it. And it's given me, I'm actually recording a Saturn Return in Pisces video tomorrow for people doing their first Saturn Return and their second. So it's been really helpful because it's reminded me not to forget about things like time and being kind to yourself and stuff like that. So that's really, really great. Anyway, lots of love to you and for everyone. Oh, we've got Pernell that's just joined us.
Oh, hi, Pernell.
How you doing? I'm going to be live with him next week on his channel.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to that one. Oh, that's going to be exciting. Woo!
So thank you to everyone in the chat room tonight and everyone that joins us later on. We love you all and look forward to catching up and connecting another time. But anyway, lots of love from Portugal.
Thank you, Louisa. Thanks, Kim. See you later. Bye.
Bye for now.